Hi, welcome to Workplace at the River, where we transform lives at the workplace. My name is Joel, and I'm part of the team at Workplace at the River, and I will be your host today. If you have just joined us, I would like to welcome you to Workplace at the River COVID-19 Survival Series, talks that will help you thrive at the workplace. Before we begin, I would like to play a simple game with all of you. Log in to menti.com, key in the code, fill in your details, and click away. Thank you for joining in that simple activity. We will go straight into our talk now, and if you've got any questions, drop them at the link on the screen. Without further ado, I would like to invite the speaker for today, Seng, who is a director in FlexiRoam. He will be speaking on rising above the crisis. Let's welcome him.
Thank you, Joel, for the introduction. Hi, my name is Seng. A little bit on my background. I started work in 1990 as an auditor in an accounting firm. Thereafter, I became an investment banker where I was involved in M&As, IPOs, debt and equity fundraising. Having been in this investment banking line for more than 13 years, I decided to then go for a career change. And I became CFOs, executive directors of public listed companies, and also had the opportunity to invest in various sectors. I've been into retail. I've also invested into properties, tech companies, startup, and over the span of my career, I have been through various crises, and some are financial related, some are not financial related. All of them are unique in their own ways. And here today, I'm here to share with you my experience. The topic is on rising over and above crisis. I am not a crisis management expert. I hope my sharing and my observation will be of some help to you. As you know, crises always come in a very unexpected way. Can never be prepared for it. That's what crisis is all about. And for example, COVID-19, right? We didn't expect it to be that bad. And during crisis time, we always have to make very hard decision, as well as sometimes very extreme decision, and it is always never easy. And therefore, you know, in the process of me re-evaluating what I've went through for these discussions, my observation is that a crisis, we want to overcome the crisis, we need to stabilize the position and the situation so that we can then move on to the next phase. So stabilization to me is a very key term, is a key perhaps a destination when we are faced with crisis, so that when we are able to stabilize, then we will have a firm foundation so that we can then also look at what we can do forward. Without stabilizing, we will then continue to focus on the current crisis. So the key thing is to be able to quickly stabilize the decision, make good decisions to stabilize. And in that process, there are two elements that are really important. One of them is leadership and communication. Perhaps timing is also a very important element in the process of stabilization. Let me now share my experiences that I've had in the past. As I've shared with you earlier, I'm a director of and shareholder of a company that's listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. A bit of a background: company is in a travel related sector. As I'm sure you know that the sector, the travel related sector, all badly hit by COVID-19. When airlines are not flying, when borders are closed, not just borders are closed, we are also being locked down at home. The company provides cellular connectivity for travelers so that you can get internet wherever you are. And because of COVID-19, the revenue of the company just plummeted on an immediate basis, and that caused financial constraint to the company. Now, prior to COVID-19, the company had a good growth run. For the last 3 financial years, the company achieved more than 80% growth in terms of revenue per annum. That's very commendable. Even as early as January this year, when we had a strategic planning meeting, we had big plans moving forward on how we're going to grow for the next 12 months, what we need to do to achieve that growth, and also talk about the kind of funding required to support the growth that the company wants to achieve. Now, within a matter of 2 to 3 months, the situation just turned around. So from hopeful with great prospect to a totally devastated situation. So in that short period of time, what I can say is that we were able to stabilize the company. Kind of stabilize doesn't mean that we are not bruised altogether. We were bruised and hit hard, but at least the company as of now, which is April, in what we call a cruise mode, and now that we can actually then start to really just look at whatever available resources that we have now to think about the next 6 months or 12 months or even longer. Now, to be able to reach that situation of stability, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made in between. So what do we do? The first thing, as in any kind of crisis, especially in the COVID-19 crisis, the key thing is about cash flow. Cash is king, right? And any kind of credit line you can get from banks or even extended payment terms from creditors is really a bonus to a situation like now. So what happened obviously is that cash flow is important. I would advise for those of you who are going through a similar situation like us to really work out your rolling cash flow by day, by week, by month, at least 3 months, 6 months, so that you will have clarity on your actual position. What are the action that you need to take so that you can last longer? So cash flow is important. Do a planning, run models, be very prudent, do a worst case scenario, and then you will be able to determine for yourself what you need to do. So I think that's what we did based on cash flow expectation. Then we can then do a proper planning on how to cut costs, how to even look at where the potential revenue can come from. So out of this, the leadership team were able to make decisions and communicate this properly to all stakeholders. Therefore, communication, a proper, open, transparent communication is also important during this crisis period, so that we can achieve a kind of situation where all stakeholders have a buy-in into the equation. Now, we talk to suppliers, talk to landlord, we talk to whoever parties, even shareholders, making sure that everybody is fully aware of what's happening. The most difficult decision obviously is on the employees. People matters most. Without people, you can't do business. So the sector that we're in is in travel related, and we do not see this sector to recover very, very fast in the future. So a quick and a hard decision has to be made with regards to employee costs, and we need to make a very, very hard decision to even put them on no pay leave for a period of time. So in a nutshell, I think it is critical to do whatever that's necessary to stabilize the situation, so that you will then have the ability to recover and focus on your resources, on what you can do next. And that's what we are at now. we have reached a point where all the hard decisions has been made in an expeditious manner. We can now focus on what we need to do moving forward for the next 3, 6 to 12 months. Now, I just want to mention this, which I think is commendable of the leadership team of this company. Now, in the process of having to make that hard decision to lay off and to put the employees on no pay leave, what the leadership team did that was commendable is to go an extra mile to find an alternative placement for them, meaning to say that to look at other potential employers who may want to hire some of them, and that effort was good, and some of them were able to find a job during this period of time. So I think, as a matter of balancing between employer and employee, I think it's good to have a open, transparent communication so that everybody will be able to transit through this crisis period in a better way. And also, I think it's important if we can help each other out. I know that it's very difficult, especially for employees during this period of time. But this is crisis. I think a lot of companies, if they cannot survive through this period, if they don't take drastic measures, perhaps when the COVID-19 is over or when the economy rebounded, they may not be around to even offer any employment opportunity. So, in this particular case, it was hard, but it was also good in the sense that we are now in a period where we start to look forward for the next 3 months, 6 months, and now we can then start thinking about what we want to do in the new norm. What will be the new norm? What will be our potential business model moving forward, right? Instead of having to spend a lot of time dealing with the crisis, right? So that's one particular case that I find that it's relevant, especially during the current crisis. The other example that I can share with you is a company that is at that point that happens in 2017. The company is a company listed on the London Stock Exchange. I was the CFO as well as executive director of the company. A majority of the shareholders are Malaysian, but the business is based in China. 90% of the revenue are from China. Most of the employees are also Chinese, with a big manufacturing plant based out of China. The company is involved in the production and manufacturing of industrial air filters, commercial air filters, as well as for residential use. Now, what happened then is that a group of key employees, a trusted key employees, decided to leave the company and move on to another competitor. And that particular competitor decided to fund them in a very big way, hoping for them to lure other employees to also move over. It's like a coup. So the crisis is such that, as we understand it, they intended to kind of weaken the company with the intention to perhaps take over and buy it cheap. Now, when you are faced with a sudden situation like this, first, the people that did this to you are people that you trusted, and they planned in such a way that it happened within a very short period of time. So during that crisis, the CEO, MD of the company did two things. One is to stabilize the existing workforce so that there is certain degree of ability to function in a normal way. Number two is actually to empower. Now, let me share with you what were the stabilization strategy that we employed then. So obviously, it's all about people in that particular situation, and in the context of someone trying to destabilize your situation. I'm sure you've heard of many horror stories of business people having to deal with in China, and perhaps this is something that I have personally never seen before, have heard before, but first-hand experiencing it. The very people that I've been dealing with on a daily basis actually did something that you would never thought of. People that we know so well, we have dinner with, we know family members of their family members, and therefore it's very difficult emotionally when someone that is so close to you did something like this. But nevertheless, what we did, the leadership of the company did, was to communicate and talk to existing group of people who are there, convince them and give them sort of affirmation that we are in control of the situation. And there's also a group of people who are the fence-sitters, those who are not sure whether they want to move over that side or move over this side. Something similar to our last election in Malaysia, the last crisis amongst the Malaysian politicians. It was actually a very good strategy in the sense that we were able to convince the majority of them to stay put. That actually gave confidence to a wider team of people. And number two, we also talked to the suppliers as well as customers, so that whatever hearsay that they have outside through the rumor mongers are all being clarified directly through us. And that actually gave confidence to our suppliers as well as to our customers, so that we can then go back into business as usual. So stabilizing the key people was what we did, and it was not easy. It involves a lot of emotion, but it was worthwhile. So once that has been stabilized, then the next thing was empowering. Because of crisis, that's why there's also opportunity. When the key core team left, the second liner rose up when we're given an opportunity to take on that position. And I think it was very interesting observation. Not only do they get to sit on the hot seat, they were also given a pay rise, right? To be able to convince them to stay, you have to give them a big increment. So it's a good opportunity, both as a higher position as well as higher salary package. So it was good for this group of people. So in that particular crisis, again, stabilizing the situation through the communication and making sure that the entire team members, including customers as well as suppliers, were all taken care of, making sure that they continue to believe in the business. Now, just to share with you, this company are doing fine now, and the company has been taken private by a Chinese investor today. In the COVID-19 crisis, they were involved in supplying and contributing some of the air filtration equipment to the Wuhan hospitals. Even in Malaysia, as I understand, they also contributed some air filtration equipments to some of the hospitals in Malaysia. So yeah, I think it was a good sort of experience that I went through, and we managed to handle the situation very, very well. So let me now then share with you some other observation. Once you are able to then stabilize, you have rise up over the crisis, then you need to start to look forward, so that you can plan. That's the whole idea with regards to rising over crisis, so that you can move to the next step. And I am part of the accomplished team, where we are a business community that comes together to support one another through the collaboration with the Indonesian Kingdom business community. They currently are also running some talk series where they use this particular term called RISE to anchor their topic of discussions during COVID-19, which stands for resilient, insightful, skill sets and experimentation. Now, resilient is an important characteristic. We need to be able to quickly recover from any difficult situation. We should look at being resilient in all crises. Therefore, we should not let the crisis stop us from being able to move forward. So resilient is important. Try to find ways to keep us being resilient. And obviously, for me personally, having faith in God is a very important part of the strength that I can get from God to be able to help me go through very difficult time. And there are certain things that we can control. There are certain things that we cannot control. Whatever that we cannot control, there's not much that we can do. We have to leave it to God. But there are certain things that we can control. For example, we can control to manage our attitude during crisis time. Be calm, be loving, be caring, have the kind of proper words that are being uttered out during crisis. And we have seen a lot of times when crisis comes, the kind of word that being uttered out can be very damaging, and it's not easy later on to manage the situation. So being resilient is important. The second thing is being insightful, having good insight and knowledge over specific matters. So we are in a situation where we are talking about the new norm. What will the new norm be? There are so many talks and webinars and reports that have been published on what is the new norm. So it's good. There's a lot of available information out there. Go ahead and look out for them. We need to be able to continue to understand the changes that's happening to the market, to the environment, to their own personal life, and prepare for it. The third thing is skill sets. It is interesting in a sense that someone actually mentioned that COVID-19 is like a reset button where we are now given a new operating system. So when you have a new operating system, it's also a fresh start for a lot of people with a lot of new opportunities, and we need to also perhaps have new skill sets. And I chanced upon the opportunity to talk to a friend of mine who is in his 50s. So I talked and asked him how's work, and he said that he will probably be out of work in the next 12 months. I said, what are you going to do? He said that I will likely be in a situation very difficult to find a job after this. So he has decided to invest some money and some time to learn how to trade on the stock exchange. He said perhaps that can be a new channel for him to make extra income as he grows older, right? And he does not depend on an employer. That's interesting, learning new skill sets. It doesn't matter if you are at that age of 50 over years old, you can still learn to be relevant, especially in the new norm. The other thing is about experimentation. The latest Harvard Business School review talk about building a culture of experimentation. We need to have a total change in attitude, and good tools are not good enough. So experimentation is so important to allow us the opportunity to get more things, to innovate, and it's an important part of a new norm. So in conclusion, I believe that a crisis always gives birth to opportunity. The bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunities. While the world is looking at a crisis where fear seems to be spreading faster than the virus, there's also a group of people who remains very optimistic, and they look at this situation as a platform where there's a lot of opportunities. So it's really up to us to choose between being fearful or exploring into the new opportunities that is presented to us. The bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunities that is before us. So I hope whatever that I've shared today has been of help to you, and thank you very much to Workplace at the River for this opportunity to share my experience. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that, Tat Seng. It's surely very informative, and thank you for sharing your heart. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that you've gone through. Yeah, it's Tat Seng since 1990. So thanks for sharing your experiences. We've got some questions, and I'd just like to remind all of us that do log in to the link tiny.cc/askwater, ASKWATR. And you can ask your questions to Tat Seng, and you can choose to remain anonymous when you ask the questions, or if you'd like Tat Seng to address you when you answer the question, do leave your name as well. All right. I'll go straight to the questions. So just a simple practical question for maybe some of us who are managing our own personal finance, or even in business. All right. How does one who is found themselves caught, like you talked about having 3 to 6 months of cash, right? Cash is king. So how does one who really has found themselves caught, they don't even have 3 months, and really worst case, they don't even have a 1 month cash flow with them. How do they manage in this time of MCO and beyond?
Hi, thank you, Joel. It is a very common question that's being asked by many entrepreneurs, especially. But every case is always unique in its own way. So to really look into what one can do, obviously, is to really understand. Firstly, for any kind of this kind of difficult situation is to really find looking at like I said, the cash flow, and analyze each and every one of them, and look at all the various ways. Firstly, obviously, it's always revenue, right? You have to really look into whether you can find additional sources, or you can find, if your business is in such a way that you really do whatever you want, like in our case, do whatever you want, there's no way you can find any form of income because the borders are closed, the shops are closed, you cannot do any business. So obviously then you will then have to look at perhaps can you do something else to find that. Even if that is not possible, then you have to really look into whether you have any other sources, for example, to the banks, or you may need to borrow money to keep the business afloat, right? That's one. The other area, obviously, to look at costs. Do you need to make hard decisions? Maybe even move out of your shops, put employees on no pay leave, whatever means. Talk to creditors, talk to suppliers to defer payment. Every little bit of effort, every dollar counts when you're in crisis. Right? It's only when you do detailed analysis will you be able to know whether you can or cannot have a runway, right? And in a situation like this, perhaps a lot of people have to make hard decisions, and I think it is inevitable. Hard decisions will have to be made. In terms of what you want to do. Yeah, I think it's not easy, but first you have to really look at the cash flow and find out whether you can find additional funds to support. In some cases where you have some shareholders who may be willing to come in to put in additional funds to just give the company a bit of a runway. Obviously, I think one has to make a big decision whether the business can or cannot recover after COVID-19, and even after the economy has rebounded. As you can see, a lot of hotels have started to just close down, right? A lot of companies have started to make a decision that instead of burning cash, putting in more cash to support this business, they rather just take a difficult decision of stopping the business and then wait maybe for recovery to restart again. Yeah. I hope that kind of helps to answer that question.
Yeah, thanks, that's it. Yeah, indeed, there's a lot of difficult questions that need to be answered. Well, Tatsi, you mentioned that we are going into this new norm, and it's like rebooting or resetting your computer with a new operating system. So maybe Tatsi, you can you can suggest or let us know what are some of the opportunities that you see. I mean, the caveat here is based on your experience, based on what you've seen in your business, even in the current climate. What are some of the opportunities you are seeing, and also what are some of the potential industries that one can venture into post MCO?
Oh, okay, that's a big question. I said earlier, when crisis comes, there's also a lot of opportunity that's real. If you actually look around for webinars, a lot of people are starting to also promote their own ways to do business. But one thing I can perhaps share with you is following from my example that I shared with you earlier, in our case where some of our employees have been put on no pay leave, where we find placements for them. Interestingly, the tech team, the tech development team, are the one that is easily absorbed by other organizations. So what it tells me is that this particular sector that is involved in technology, they are the programmer behind the people who develop sort of back-end software technology, as well as those who are in digital marketing. Definitely, those are the areas seems to be quite good. The online shopping are doing well, so they need a lot more of this kind of people. So, yeah, for sure. Moving forward, obviously, a lot of people knows that the healthcare, even the food sector is still vibrant, and I've got friends who are in food ingredient. They are doing well, right? They're still selling. People still need to produce food product for consumption. Yeah, so I think in terms of my expectation of the new norm, it can be a lot of things. It can be traditional business, but can be revamped into something more interesting. But it is a difficult sort of guess what's going to be, but it is something that we will all discover because we are still in this season. It's hard to really perhaps put on definitively what it's going to be like, but we will all journey this together. That's why it's very good to have a good insight on what's happening. We will all journey. This is just beginning, right? Expectation of this crisis is going to be quite wild. So we will see transformation changes over the next 6 months, 12 months.
All right. Thanks, Tatsing. So basically, you're talking about tech, the digital marketing world. Things that are going online. It certainly looks like that. And thanks for your answers. Okay, we've got a question from Reynolds. I'm not exactly sure of your question, so maybe you can rephrase your question and clarify a bit. You want some advice about risk and outcomes, right? If you can rephrase your question, maybe I can help ask it to Tatsin. But we'll move on to another question that we have. Sorry, I missed. Yeah, okay. Communication. Yeah, you talked about the importance of communication. So if you're really in a crisis, how do you go about communicating that with your employees, with the stakeholders, shareholders? How do you go about that? Because I believe that normally companies, when they are doing very well, they would not communicate that to run or evade tax or or stuff like that, so that they are not pinpointed. But if they're not doing well, they also will not communicate and will not let people know, so that people won't know they're in trouble. So at this time, when you talk about communication, what do you mean, and how best can one communicate?
Yeah, okay. Communication, when it comes to crisis, we always need a team of people to journey this through. If you journey this alone, it's always very, very difficult. So from my experience, for my past few crises that I've gone through, it's always important to be to firstly get hold of the key people, the decision makers in the organization. We need to come together, and we need to be able to discuss openly and analyze and really put into perspective how serious the situation is, right? So that part, to me, is always very important. At least the key people, whether it is the shareholders, the board, the key management team. So that involves a lot of planning to communicate, and of course, not just communication, but there must be scenario analysis. There must be detail in that communication, so that we are looking at specific facts and not assumptions when we are in crisis to make decision. One thing obviously is that communication at times of crisis is also a reflection perhaps of the culture of the organization. Traditionally, if you have had a culture where there have been very sparse communication amongst the leadership and the employees, then perhaps when it comes to crisis, it's going to be very difficult to build that bridge of trust as well as teamwork. So in our case, I must say that we have, although we go through a big challenge, but we've got a culture just like a family. So there's been open communication. There's a lot of town halls where employees can ask questions, very close-knit structure. So when it comes to crisis, that part of the communication a bit more seamless, so that things can be discussed in detail, and then we can progress towards decision making without having a lot of challenges. So I think in that sense, yeah, you need to make an effort to discuss, and you have to know who are your stakeholders that will be relevant in these discussions. Right? Perhaps in getting through this, like for us, we know that our suppliers are very important, so we need to go and talk to them, right? So that they are the first to know. And because COVID-19 is such a global thing, everybody knows that everybody's in trouble, and therefore they will have a degree of understanding. We have to be transparent and be very clear about the situation, accept the situation, and make sure that the rest of the team are also fully aware, so that we can then, when we want to go to the next phase, everybody is fully aware where we stand. And then when we communicate and make hard decisions, they are already in the know, and the expectation can be managed. I hope that helps.
Thanks for that, Tat Seng. Wow, the questions are really coming in right now. There are a lot of questions that are coming in related to investment. So, I'm sure some of you have asked very specific questions, but maybe Tat Seng, you can share with us some of the principles about those of us who want to go into investing. So, earlier you talked about companies like certain industries, like tech, the back end, the digital type of thing. But I believe there are some people who are wanting to invest in stocks, mutual funds, property, real estate. How do we go about investing at this point of time while we are in this COVID-19 crisis?
Joel, this is a very tough question, right? I'm not an expert. Qualify first, right? I'm not an expert in personal investing. It's a very wide area when it comes to personal investing. Obviously, at this particular season, everybody needs to be very cautious. At the same time as looking at opportunities. So it all boils down to really at the end of the day what kind of funds and reserve you have, right? If you have a lot to spare, then you can take a lot of risk. But if you have very little to spare, then perhaps you be very careful during this period of time. I won't be able to really look into the current situation. There are people who are looking into properties. There are people who are looking into stock investing. There are people who are looking into various options of investing. But obviously, for me, this period is a period where we need to be very careful. Perhaps do a lot of research, do a lot of study, and make sure that you have got the kind of risk appetite to invest in. If it's a risky investment, study it first. Make sure that you do a lot of study. If you are not new into investing, then do a lot of research. Don't jump in based on rumors and based on just pure advice from somebody. Do your homework and do a lot of studies, be it property or be it stocks or whatever, or mutual funds. But I'm not an expert, so I cannot give you specific advice on that. I'm just saying, be careful, analyze your risk profile, and the question is whether you have the reserve, extra reserve. But like I said, if you are in a situation where you are currently having a lot of cash surplus, then obviously you have got added advantage, and you should take opportunity during this period of time to maximize your potential, because a lot of things will come cheap coming months for sure. So that is your opportunity, but be careful along the way.
Okay, thank you, Tat Seng. Yeah, so the caveat is, this is not a talk to advise us on a specific investment portfolio, but yeah, do take Tat Seng's suggestion, Tat Seng's advice to study what you're going to invest in. It's best to know before you even put down your money to invest, no matter what type of investment it is, right? So
yeah, but also, you know, Joe, idea day is when you invest, you have to be prepared for losses along the way. So you need to be able to make that kind of risk-taking position.
Yeah. High risk, high return. Investment 101, right? Yeah. Okay. Still got a lot of questions. So Tat Seng, you talked about this new norm, and maybe I'm going to try and put a few questions together. So Tat Seng, being in FlexiRoam, which essentially is related to travel, but it's also related to telecommunications. How does you and your team look forward or explore this new norm, and how can one go into this new norm? And the other question is, being a travel-based company, what do you think about moving all these travel things online? So we've talked a bit about doing things digitally online. So what are some of your thoughts, firstly on your team, secondly on doing travel online?
Joel, so you know, I've shared with you my background. I've been into manufacturing, I've been into retail, I've been into property. So I've seen many kind of businesses, and FlexiRoam is into the travel tech sector. So the backbone of the business is actually technology. So it is actually without assets, everything is digital. So when crisis comes, it's quite easy for us to kind of pivot, to even scale down as well. So for sure, I think it depends on the sector they're in. For us, we know we are in the technology sort of platform as well. The backbone of our business model is actually already online. That's what you asked me. It's already online. So in essence, we are able to actually scale up quite fast globally. We were going through a huge growth trajectory just before COVID-19. So in essence, for us to pivot also technically is quite easy. Only thing is that we don't have enough resources to support the entire team. So we need to take a decision to kind of slow it down for the moment. But that doesn't stop us from experimenting and looking for other opportunity that can be done online. For example, we are already into telecommunication. So connectivity is part of our business that we are doing. So we are looking into the IoT sector, Internet of Things, because for all Internet of Things, they will require connectivity. So we have a role in that area. So immediately after the travel sector kind of take a plunge, we focus a bit more in expediting the opportunity to generate revenue from IoT. So that is one example. And I must say that, you know, not every industry can pivot or move that fast, but definitely online business, people with a tech foundation, perhaps they can. So I've seen it firsthand, and therefore I'm quite interested to the tech sector, because there's a lot of innovation and experimentation that can be done by this sector.
Thank you for that, Seng. Yeah, I think that's the best that you can do to share about your experience, and I think that's what people want to hear, because well, all of us have no clue of what's going to happen next and how to tackle it. There's a few more questions. So Tat Seng, you talked about you know, some difficult decisions that you had to make, and one of it was to let some of your employees go on no pay leave, and some of them you kind of reposition them to other companies. So how did you manage to maintain their morale? How did you keep them positive about the situation? The current wave is all financial, but we always feel that the next wave will be to deal with people's emotional health, because they're losing their jobs. And also, how do you manage that in your company?
I think obviously when you need to face the facts of that kind of decision, then you really have to then deal with it. But obviously behind the scene, they are also human. We are also human. So that part of the equation can only be done if there is communication, there's action, right? Two things: communication and action. Communication, obviously, being able to listen to their problem is definitely a very key thing, because they also need to be able to share what problem they face, perhaps the kind of money they have left to support for the next couple of months, or they have a family to feed, and of course also the need to be able to look at whether we can help them out of that, the business environment, whether on a private capacity there is ability to help them. I think all this will really help in terms of managing the equation. I think going all out by the leadership team to find a placement for them already is a reflection. That means to say that they know and they can see that the leadership team is trying really hard to find a job for them. I think if you are in that position, if your boss really tries to help you out to the best of his ability, I think that is commendable. I'm sure we will all be very thankful with that kind of effort, whether it's successful or not, besides the point. But at least someone is willing to go all out to help you go through this difficult season.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so I guess it's just having support and some amount of hand-holding by your company, by FlexiRoam, and I think many people appreciate it. So they're not being let go, but they're being repositioned. So I think that is a good thing. We're almost running out of time, but I will ask one more question. So Tat Seng, the caveat is still there. I know this is your opinion and your experience, but how long do you think it will take for us to recover, our economy? So we are on the downtrend now, and I think maybe make it specific to the travel industry. So travel is affected. All planes are grounded. How long will it take to get back to firstly good level, good health, and the next level is to thrive? So how long do we expect?
Well, if you look at overall for the past crisis, in the 2007 crisis, as well as the one in 97-98 crisis, generally it takes about 2 to 3 years for the entire cycle to come back. So I think the overall expectation that this one probably will also take on an overall basis for the market to recover will take about that kind of gestation, 2-3 years to come back. But of course, it is difficult. Even for Malaysia, we really don't know. For us, we don't know whether the next coming Raya, whether be a exodus, and whether there's going to be a second spike that's going to come. We don't know. But obviously, we don't expect the sort of the curve to be fast. So probably it will take a period of time for recovery. And for sure, I think for travel sector that we are in, we all want it to be fast. We want all the airlines to start flying again, but we also have to be realistic. There are three things here we have to really accept, and we have to adjust. We're now adjusting, and don't know, maybe 6 months, 12 months, I don't know really. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess your guess is as good as mine, right? And it depends on how serious the situation is. Anyway, thank you for that. Thank you so much for your time, Tat Seng. Before we go, do you have any last words or closing comments for us?
Yeah. Don't be despair. Go through this. It is very important to accept the fact that we are in crisis. Important to accept. And then number two, we need to adjust. Right? We need to adjust so that we can then transit this through, and then only we can then perhaps accelerate once we have some form of stability. So accept the crisis that we're in. We want to be able to adjust. We need to all adjust, and then hopefully we can then accelerate when the economy rebounds.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so remember the 3 A's: accept, adjust, and accelerate. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time with us, Tat Seng, and sharing your personal experience and your wealth of knowledge in this area of investment and travel, even in this point of time, and just to share even some of your struggles about how you've run your company, the hard choices you've had to make. So I just want to thank you so much. Have a good time. And for those of you who've got questions for Tat Seng, and I see some of your questions coming in as well, we will try and attempt to pass your questions to Tat Seng, and maybe he can take it offline with you all, right, to answer some of the questions. All right. But next week, we're going to have another business talk. Next week is going to be another talk by Jun Lian. She is a deputy director with Bank Negara Malaysia, and she's going to be talking about a policymaker's response. So you see all the policies and the various financial plans that are done by our government, and how is the whole process that the government goes through. So to hear more, come and join us next week. And sign up at the link. Places are limited, so do sign up as soon as you can, as soon as the link is ready. I think after this talk it'll be ready. So do sign up and see you next week. All right. And if you'd like to connect with us, and you've got any comments, you just like to drop your contact, or you want to know more about Workplace at the River, please drop us your details at tiny.cc/waterconnect. And we'll get back to you. And we would love to be in touch with you. We'd love to connect with you. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for your time. Have a good night today, and see you again next week. Good night.